Here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Garrett Smith, and I am the nutrition detective around these YouTube parts. This is Love Your Liver live stream number 74. So, yeah, we just recently broke 3,200 subscribers on the channel, so thank you to everyone who has joined us. If you are here and you want to be able to be in the live chat, make sure you subscribe and make sure to like the video. And if you get here, if you're watching this video later, please make sure to leave a comment below. It can be as short as you like. It just helps the computers know that people like us. Okay, so here we go today. Today is all subscriber Q&A. I had something I thought about going over about nitric oxide and liver damage. Here's the gist. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to go into that research today. I'm going to do questions like I said I would. Trying to stimulate nitric oxide will cause you liver injury. Don't do it. Why do you think everybody got into nitric oxide? Whenever you see a huge fad in the health industry, know that it's going to damage you long term. Short term, you may feel great. Long term, it's damaging. So I'll think about getting into that. There was actually a study on L-arginine, and the damage to the bile ducts was outrageous. Outrageous. So here we go. Remember, super chats are enabled. So if you have a question you want to get high priority, like to move to the top of the pile of the questions, make sure to do a super chat. That's how you get to the top of the pile. Otherwise, if you have questions that you really want answered, or you would like an unlimited amount of answers from me each week inside the Nutrition Detective Network and the Love Your Liver program, there's the inner circle, which is where after this show, I go and I answer questions for 1 to 2 hours, where I can be a little more straightforward in my answers, where I don't have to worry about computers knocking me down in searches because of words I use. So anyway, that's where if you want all the questions answered, the inner circle's inside the network. So here we go. Ramon asks, I'm wanting to incorporate beans into my diet. As a Cuban, I tolerate them all, but which kind is the best and how should I prepare them? Soaked overnight, pressure cooked, simmered, etc. Thanks. Okay. So best is always an extremely complicated term. Beans can be complex in terms of which ones are the best for a person and whether or not a person tolerates them at this time or at all. So one of the things I do is, okay, I want you guys to listen very carefully, because when people take what I'm about to say and they do exactly what I'm about to say to not do with it, I get irritated. Irritates the heck out of me. What I'm about to say is very, very straightforward and simple. And people take it and they use it in exactly the way I'm going to say not to do it. So hopefully you guys, being that you're all above average intelligence because you're here listening to this, hopefully you can follow these instructions. And this is for everybody out there. This is not just directed at you, Ramona. Your question's very good. So one of the things out there is the blood type diet based on lectins. At least it claims to be based on lectins, but sometimes they talk about foods that don't have lectins in there, and they're like, this type should eat this and this type shouldn't eat this, and you're talking about a food that doesn't have lectins, which is kind of weird. Like chicken. Chicken has no lectins, but they'll say this blood type can eat chicken and this blood type can't. And you go, well, what's that based on? Anyway, if there's any place where the blood type diet food list could be useful, would be in the foods with the highest amount of lectins, right? What are these foods? Grains and beans, legumes. Those are the highest lectin foods. So listen very carefully. The one place, or should I say the two places, where the blood type diet food lists could prove useful to people, listen carefully, to people to try to figure out where to start with their selection of beans or grains. The two places, the two foods, beans and grains, is where you could use the blood type diet food lists to help you decide where to start on your experimentation with beans or whole grains. Now, if any of you come back to me after seeing this and say, well, I started doing the blood type diet because you said so, you absolutely missed the boat. You absolutely completely misinterpreted what I just said. I'm telling you how not to misinterpret it, and you still did it. Don't do that. That's why I make things very, very clear. So I really want you to get it. So one place to start your experimentation with beans and grains can be to look at the blood type diet lists for beans and whole grains. You can find them on the internet. And so what am I saying? There's like, I forget the names they use for these lists, but there's like optimal for your blood type, and then there's like okay, and then there's like not so good. So they'll use different terms, but you'd want to start with the really good ones or the okay ones. So that's one place you can start. Now, the next thing, obviously, if there's just a bean that makes you feel not so great in your guts, bloaty, farty, like, okay, so let's say you're adding beans to your diet. I saw this really great way of adding them, which was to add them slowly. So your gut biome can adapt, because the soluble fiber in beans is a sort of prebiotic. It feeds your gut bacteria. And when it's feeding gut bacteria, it's going to shift your gut biome. It's going to feed certain ones and it's going to starve other ones. And so things shift around in your guts, whether you're getting gassy or whatever. Now, 2 weeks, one of these suggestions on how to start on beans in a way that you'll tolerate them, or it's less, okay, so it's dose dependent, right? So the more beans, if you start eating, a can of beans a day, those first 2 weeks might be really rough, because that's a lot of prebiotic soluble fiber that can, your gut bacteria can ferment it, and it doesn't always feel great or smell great or any of that. So you start with like 2 tablespoons worth of the beans you chose a day. And I would try to stick with one type of beans for that 2 weeks, so you can really know what that bean does for you. This is the closest we can come to scientific studies on you. One person, you are your own scientific study. So if you use all sorts of variables, you try 3 different types of beans and you rotate them each day, and you may not be able to figure out which kind works for you as well. So you could start slow to, adding beans, 2 tablespoons of beans a day for 2 weeks. And by the end of that, you should be able to, if you tolerate that type of bean, you should be able to move up in it. Okay. The last thing is for people who know or who suspect they are very copper toxic. One bean I'll just say I don't like. One bean I do not like is kidney beans, red kidney beans. The lectin in those has actually, when they weren't prepared right, the red kidney beans, I believe, if I recall correctly, have actually killed people if they weren't prepared right. Now, foods that are that toxic, I'm not a fan of them. And red kidney beans have never sat well in my gut ever. Like when I was a kid, my mom would make, chili, homemade chili. And later on, I figured out that the black beans in it were fine with me. The pinto beans in it were fine with me. But the red kidney beans, not fine. I do not like red kidney beans. And obviously they're red, so they're more likely to have more carotenoids, more vitamin A in them than other types of beans. So we have you could look up the copper content of beans, of the ones. So let's say you look at the blood type diet stuff for beans and you're like, okay, so I got this list of maybe like 4 beans. And then Ramon, you're saying you tolerate beans just fine. So you're like, okay, so I tolerate all 4 of these. Okay. Why don't you look at the next thing you might do? Look at the copper content of them and maybe prioritize them based on that, lowest copper would be better. And then the last thing can be, I generally don't worry about the vitamin A content of beans very much, because it's all in if you've ever broken open a bean, you'll see the inside is white. So like 95% or 90 to 95% of that bean is white in color. So it's not going to have a lot of vitamin A in the inner part of the bean. It's only on that outer part, like with an apple, right? The skin is the part that might have some vitamin A in it. You could peel it off. You could say, well, it's just really not that much because it's just the peel on the outside. It's not like eating papaya where the whole thing is yellow or orange, or mango, stuff like that. So then you could look at the color of the beans and choose them based on the one that was like the least colored in terms of bright colors, strong colors, dark colors. You could prioritize that. Now, Grant Genereux did all his great, amazing health recovery eating black beans every day. But again, black beans, yes, they have polyphenols in them, but it's only in the outer part of them, right? It's not on the inside. You break open a black bean and it's white on the inside. So those are kind of the ways that you could go about trying to find the best beans for you. Don't forget, peas are a bean. They are technically a bean. So are peanuts. I'm not a big fan of peanuts at all. They're full of aflatoxin and aspergillus mold on the inside. Remember, if you ever open up a peanut shell, this may be the way to quit your peanut habit. Go find some whole peanuts, crack them open, look on the inside of the shells, and when you see the silky, it looks almost like a spider web lining the inside of the peanut shell, that's mold. That's mold growing all around that peanut. And they're taking all those peanuts and just crushing them into peanut butter for you to eat. And no, I don't believe these companies that are like aflatoxin-free peanut butter. Peanuts are not aflatoxin and liver cancer. Go look it up online. Extremely correlated. Peanuts are just not. They taste good. I'm not going to deny that. There's lots of things that taste good. I mean, crackheads love crack. That doesn't mean it's good for them. So, beans. You could use, for beans and whole grains, you could use the blood type diet list. Don't use the blood type diet food list for anything else. Am I clear on that? You could use the blood type diet food list, the optimal and the okay lists to start helping you pick beans and grains. Do not use the blood type diet food list for anything else. I hope that's clear. Then you could, of the beans that you were going to try, you could look at them for copper content. And you want to choose the lowest copper content or prioritize the ones that are lower on the list. And then you could look into polyphenols, the color, polyphenols and vitamin A, so the color of the beans as kind of a final way to prioritize them. And obviously through all of this, if you don't like them, you're not going to eat them. So pick something you like. And if you start eating beans and you don't feel good, you push too many beans. I had a woman, she really got into the beans. This is a woman who's really a hard charger, and she's an overachiever, and she was eating 3 cans of beans a day, like 3 cans of beans a day. And she was detoxing too hard from too much soluble fiber, and I had to be like, let's cut that in half. This is not a game. You can push detox too hard and make yourself feel awful. For those of you who aren't in the program yet, I do put a limit on soluble fiber, a suggested limit on soluble fiber this is soluble fiber alone, 30 grams a day max of soluble fiber, which I think is about 1.5 cans of beans. Pretty sure, if I recall correctly. About around there for most beans. We generally assume beans have 5 grams of soluble fiber in a 1/2 cup, I believe it was. Yeah, 1/2 cup of beans has 5 grams of soluble fiber. And I think a can has a cup and a half of beans in it, if I recall. So anyway, there's your beans. Can you do the same stuff with whole grains? Sure. You could do this totally the same approach. Like if you're looking at a grain and it's yellow, like yellow semolina flour, even though it's whole grain, it's going to be more vitamin A. It may not be great. If you're picking quinoa, okay, there's white quinoa, there's red quinoa, and there's black quinoa. So which one would be most preferable? It'd be the white one. Okay? So the colors can give it away for you, folks. Nature marks, the more poisonous things are, the more colored, brightly colored, strongly colored, darkly colored they are. So just like with quinoa, white is the preferred one over red or black. Don't think that those colors are nutritious. They're not. You've been lied to. Okay. So cooking, simmering or pressure cooking. Oh, soaking them overnight is the best way. Generally, I suggest if you're going to soak them overnight, soak them in dry beans. So canned beans are already soaked, right? They're in water. That's why the water in the can of beans is so gooey, because I forget what the name of the bean juice, whatever that is. But anyway, they've already been soaked. I would rinse off that water because it may have some stuff from the can in it. So you want to get rid of that water, the bean juice, and rinse the beans and then use those. So if you're going to use canned beans, make sure they're organic. But if you're going to do dry beans, definitely soak them. If you soak them on the counter and you let them sit too long, they're gonna probably start sprouting a bit. You don't want to sprout things, folks. That's when the vitamin A, that's when the bean starts making, or the seed starts making carotenoids. You can look it up. If you want to look it up in the research, it's called germination. They don't call it sprouting. They call it germination. Germination is when seeds, beans are a seed, right? Nuts are a seed. Seeds are seeds. Grains are seeds. So tons of the things we eat are seeds. Seeds that have not sprouted have the least defenses. Okay? You can kind of analogize it to a baby animal or a baby human. Like the younger the baby is, the less defenses it has. Right? I mean, even just think about a baby that can't crawl. Like it has no defenses, none. That'd be like a seed that has not sprouted. As soon as that baby could crawl, it has a defense. It can move, right? So it's gaining defenses as it grows. Sprouting is basically giving the seed time to make more defenses. Don't sprout. It's so much time, and you're going the wrong way with it. Like the older the plant gets, the more defenses it has. So don't try to make it make more defenses. Okay. But soaked overnight is great in the fridge. I typically soak them overnight in the fridge because let's say you can't get to making them the next day. If they're in the fridge, if you leave them out on the counter, they're going to start to get kind of funky because they're starting to sprout. It's too warm. So if you put them in the fridge, at least the warmth is not there to accelerate that process, and and soak them in good water. Oh my gosh. Use filtered water to soak them. They're soaking up that water. If you wouldn't drink tap water, don't soak your beans in tap water. Right? Don't cook your pasta. If you're making pasta or something like that, cooking beans, cooking pasta, the water that you cook them in is going to soak into them. So if you wouldn't drink that water, don't cook dry foods in that water you wouldn't drink. It's like the same thing. Anything you put on your skin, you assume it gets into your bloodstream. So if you put lotion on your skin that you would not eat, it's going into your blood. It could get there from eating. It could get there through your skin. Somebody said the other day, I don't know if this is true. They said it on Twitter, but they said they heard that, assume that 1/3 of whatever you put on your skin is going to be absorbed into your bloodstream. I have no idea how true that is. If you haven't seen my thread on Twitter about, let me go find that. I'll go find it for you guys. It was a really good thread, I thought. I like my own threads. Let me find it. It's the one I did on topical vitamin A. Hold on. Ugh. Where is it? Oh, come on now. There it is. Ladies, you are going to want to read this if you used retinol skin creams, if you used Retin-A or you're using Retin-A, retinol palmitate they put, so there was a study where they put retinol palmitate. Some of the sunscreen companies are putting vitamin A retinol palmitate in sunscreens. And there was a study where they had rats and I believe they shaved part of the rats and they put sunscreen on. They did some rats with no sunscreen. They did some with retinol palmitate. They did some with just the sunscreen with no vitamin A in it. The rats with the vitamin A in the sunscreen, this is all in that thread. The rats with the vitamin A in the sunscreen got more skin cancer faster, and the tumors were bigger. And also in that thread, I talk about where they gave the U.S. veterans, the ex-military guys, Retin-A cream to rub on their face to prevent skin cancer, and they had to stop the study because too many of them were dying early. Okay. I met a woman this last week. She's got terrible migraines. First thing I asked her, she works at a beauty salon. I was like, do you put retinol or Retin-A on your face? And she's like, every night. I love my retinol cream. And I was like, okay. And then I said, are you on birth control? And she says, yes. I'm like, ugh. So if you haven't seen my video on this channel of how birth control raises vitamin A and copper in the blood, you should watch that, ladies. This has been known since 1975. Weird thing that birth control makes you infertile and it raises vitamin A and copper in your blood. That's a weird coincidence. It's almost like a self-poisoning to make you infertile. And then if you haven't seen the research on birth control making women gain tons of weight. I mean, the funniest thing about birth control, in terms of if there was a scheme to try to reduce the total number of people around, is, I mean, not only does birth control make women temporarily infertile, if not permanently, it kills their libido, so they don't want it anymore. And then it makes most women gain tons of weight. If you're one of there is a small subset of women who lose tons of weight from birth control. That's actually a worse sign, just so you know. In terms of liver health, going underweight is a worse sign than those who are going overweight. It doesn't mean one group is, better than the other. It just means that that's the way your body's going. But the sign of underweight people tends to be a not as great sign for their liver. I'm not trying to fearmonger here. It's just what I've seen. So underweight people have a longer way to go. But we have gotten people better where they start gaining weight in a good way, underweight people gaining weight in a good way and holding the weight on. And then we have overweight people who are finally able to lose weight. I posted a testimonial on Twitter and Facebook this last week of a gentleman who couldn't lose weight. He tried keto, he tried carnivore, he tried all the big fad diets of the day, and he didn't lose any weight on any of them. And he started doing the vitamin A detox approach, and he started using magnesium and potassium. And lo and behold, I think it was 2 or 3 months now, he's down 20 pounds, and he's not trying to lose weight. You store toxin, fat soluble. So people call them fat soluble vitamins. What does fat soluble mean? It means you store them in fat. So let's just say I'm right. and they're actually fat-soluble toxins, and people are taking in too many of them, what do you think the body's going to do if it has to store them? How could the body make more storage? It makes more fat to store the fat-soluble toxins. Fatty liver. I've been over that before in other live streams. Fatty liver just so happens to be yellow. Weird that vitamin A and toxic bile are yellow too. Anyway, so moving on. Sorry, just one last thing, Ramon, on cooking beans. Generally, the harder you cook the beans, in terms of water is always the best way to cook, whether we're talking about steam or boiling, because water doesn't take the temperature as high. So just so you know, I'm not saying to eat raw, but I'm saying if you can cook things without taking them up into the less you cook things going into the 350, 400, 450 range, where things are actually getting charred. So like when I make my chicken thighs for the week, I cook them in the Instant Pot. So pressure cooking them. That's steam, right? Steam and water. Better than grilling them. Now, do I still grill food? Yeah, absolutely. I still grill food. But the more things you can move towards cooking them with water, steaming, boiling, that kind of stuff. I know it doesn't taste as good. I'm not arguing that. We're here to talk about health. So water cooking methods are the healthiest, if you will. Okay. And then simmering, you could do like the crock pot, you could simmer them, you could just generally what we're finding is the longer you cook these things, the less of the damaging stuff is in them. Or at least it's been broken down more along the pathway. Okay, so that was a long question. Oh, I see Will. Will said, zinc helps make retinol binding protein. Yes. Which moves toxins out into the adipocytes. I ran a poll in the Love Your Liver program. Underweight people all said they got low beef. Yeah. Let me find my thread on Twitter. You guys aren't following my Twitter or you haven't read my pinned thread on Twitter, man, you really should go do that. There it is. So I'm going to post this. This is my Twitter thread. Vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist. There's a variation on the video from this YouTube channel, but I've expanded upon it and shown how whatever people want to think is vitamin A deficiency, it's protein deficiency or zinc deficiency or taurine deficiency or a combination of all three or two or three of them, which basically means people have a meat deficiency. And the meat that tends to be highest in those three things altogether is red meat. Some of the people who have the toughest time with this process are people who have not been eating red meat, who don't eat red meat maybe for religious reasons. They don't eat beef for religious reasons. They just don't eat enough protein. If you have somebody who doesn't eat enough protein in general and they take Accutane, oh, that's bad news. I'm sorry, Will, I forgot to say thank you very much for the super chat. But yeah, zinc deficiency, protein deficiency, taurine is really only found in decent amounts in red meat. There's a little bit in chicken, like 10 times less than red meat. We're talking 10 times less, I believe, was what I found. And if people think there's taurine in eggs and dairy, nope. The amount is so small and it's not even useful. What do they feed the rats and mice in the early vitamin A studies, the vitamin A deficiency studies? They fed them casein protein, which is a dairy protein, which means it has no taurine, no zinc, and it contains vitamin A. When you look at the casein protein they use in rat studies and they say it's vitamin-free, you can go look this up. You go look up the vitamin-free casein, vitamin A-free casein, or the vitamin-free casein. It's yellow. How did the milk protein go from white to yellow? That's strange. Maybe the way they processed it is now showing you that there was vitamin A in there the whole time. You want to know what they test the casein for? Do they test it for retinoic acid? No. They test it for retinol. So if it's changed into retinoic acid, they could test that casein and say, there's no retinol in here. And maybe they're right. Is there vitamin A in it? Vitamin A activity? Absolutely. Here's a funny idea or concept. Ghee, right? Butter. Generally, so you look at butter and it's like maybe a pale yellow. And if you melt it and then you let it re-solidify, you ever noticed how it's a darker yellow than it used to be? You know how they prepare, I believe how they prepare casein to be vitamin A free is, I believe they treat it with alcohol and they heat it. How do you oxidize vitamin A? Heat. All oxidizing vitamin A does is it moves it along the detox pathway. It doesn't make it disappear. Maybe it turns more yellow. Weird. Casein used to be white, and then it turns more yellow, even though they say there's no vitamin A in it. And butter, when you turn it into ghee, it gets darker yellow. Maybe we're showing the vitamin A that was in there. I don't know why it's white. Must just be the chemical structure. Why, like in milk, why the vitamin A is white in milk, and then if you cook it, it starts to turn more yellow. I don't know why that is, other than taking it out of the chemical structure somehow. Someday we're going to do we're going to send some of the vitamin A free casein that they use in mice and rat studies to a lab, to a non-corrupt lab, that will show that there's absolutely retinoic acid in there. Absolutely, no doubt. Which would then turn all of the vitamin A science in animals completely on its head and make all of it just garbage. Which it is. So, moving on. This is an interesting comment. Pierre is a big fan of the Love Your Liver program, and he's super helpful. He's a moderator here. Pierre says, if I remember correctly, white beans have the most molybdenum and a great amount of soluble fiber. Soak them overnight and then boil them on medium heat to the desired consistency. It sounds legit. I don't know if I can confirm. I mean, I'm not going to confirm that information here right now. Beans are the best source of molybdenum in the diet. Absolutely. Beans are also an amazing source of folate, which, if on this channel, there's a video going over how vitamin A depletes folate. Weird that everybody's obsessing, all the methylation people are obsessing over folate. And then they still tell people to take vitamin A. It's like they're causing their own problems. Strange. Okay. Oh, let me see. So Ramon posted something. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you for the super chat, Ramon. He said, thank you for such a lengthy and in-depth explanation of my beans questions. May you and yours have a blessed and happy new year. God bless. Well, thank you very much, Ramon. Back. Same at you. Same back to you. It's going to be a very good year. 2023 is going to be a very good year. I hope. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's what I would suggest right now. We will see. Monica says, hi, Dr. Smith. In what form comes the magnesium in your cream formula? What are your thoughts on zinc carnosine? Thanks. Okay, so the only form of magnesium I really, couple of forms that I've found are useful. Topically, magnesium chloride. Now, okay, so she just mentioned my cream formula. We are working on, we have had some challenges in formulation to make a magnesium lotion. Why are we having challenges in formulation? Because I was trying to do it with no preservatives. I was trying to make it as absolutely clean as possible. that doesn't always work, right? Can't be sending people an all natural lotion that molds. And there's issues with that. So that's a very real issue. So don't always blame companies that they can't make everything as natural as you want. There's realities of things grow, right? As I remember somebody saying, like, they were talking about it like a food co-op, right? And so you have like the GMO stuff. This is not usually at a food co-op, but right, the GMO stuff, they spray tons of stuff on, and like it sits around and nothing ever grows on it. No bugs ever want it. It's like it's almost like it's plastic. Nobody wants to eat it. The bugs don't even want to eat it. And then you've got the more natural stuff where it goes bad. It's like that McDonald's hamburger or cheeseburger that never ages, right? That's like the GMO and the sprayed plants and stuff. And then you got the other stuff that's real food that does decay and go bad. We're trying to use very real stuff. And because of that, it can go bad. So we're working on it. But magnesium chloride is what will be in it. It will be by far, by like 25%, the highest magnesium containing lotion on the market. Going to be good stuff. I always have the ladies in my life, I always get it and I have them test it to see if they like it. No sense. Absolutely no sense in it. Like I'm trying to make it follow. I'm a man of principles. So I'm trying to make it follow all the stuff that I do, while within the realities of, making sure stuff doesn't grow in it and all that stuff. So yeah, but magnesium chloride is what we're going to use, what we use. USP, pharmaceutical grade. So it's as clean as possible. Don't be afraid of pharmaceutical grade in terms of magnesium chloride. That just means it's as clean as possible. Food grade is another way you could put it. So that's what will be there. Some people inside the Love Your Liver program, the Nutrition Detective Network, have Wardy Harmon has come up with a great magnesium, I think like kind of like a cream or a body butter. Mine will be a lotion. Mine will be in a pump. But there's a thicker one. It's only like 50 milligrams, I think, of magnesium a serving. So you got to use a lot of it to get to the same, 8 times as much of it to get to the same dose. But that people are liking that in there, and the recipes in there. I don't know the recipe off the top of my head. So what are my thoughts on zinc carnosine? Zinc carnosine in the research can be helpful for GERD, ulcers, H. pylori, that stuff. Does it help raise zinc levels? No. It's completely useless in raising zinc levels. Tried it. Doesn't raise zinc levels. Now, so then we start going, well, why doesn't zinc itself, why doesn't zinc picolinate fix stomach ulcers and GERD and all that stuff? I can't say. But we do know that zinc will, over time, zinc increases bile production. Can be very strong. This is why, for a lot of people, when they start on zinc, if you take zinc on an empty stomach, you get nauseous. You might even throw up. Where does the nausea or the vomiting come from? It comes from the zinc itself stimulating a bile dump. Some of that bile goes back up into your stomach. Your stomach's reaction to having bile in it is you get nauseous and you throw up. Or maybe you throw up. My brother, funny story from, I think I was in my 20s. My brother woke up one morning and he was feeling kind of sick and he asked me what he should do. And I said, we got some zinc lozenges, go take them. And he did on an empty stomach and he proceeded to throw up. So I remember one morning, back in my paleo days, I was going to go on my mom and I and my dad, we'd go on walks up by their house, which is really hilly. And in the paleo days, I thought sardines were so healthy. So I had sardines in olive oil before I went on the walk. And I thought it would be enough to take my zinc with. And I took the zinc and I took the sardines And I went on the walk, and the whole walk, because it wasn't enough sardines. So here's a tip. If you ever take zinc and you get nauseous from it, it means you need to eat a better meal with the zinc. You need more solid food, a better meal, a more hearty meal, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't mean richer meal, doesn't mean more fat, just a better, bigger meal. And that will help avoid that, or just lower your dose. So I'm going on this walk with my mom, and we didn't walk, crazy fast or anything. We weren't those goofy like race walkers, but we were walking, trying to get some, some exercise. And I love hanging out with my parents. But walking those hills with the zinc making me nauseous, with the sardines burping up, it was just wretched. It was like, I will never forget that memory. I was just walking back on the biggest hill to finish and going, this is just awful. And what did I do? So if you ever get nauseous from zinc and you didn't eat enough, just eat. That's all you got to do. Morning sickness. What is morning sickness? And I know people say, well, it could be any time of day. Yeah, okay, that doesn't matter. Morning sickness. Eat. I know you don't want to eat. You're nauseous. You have to eat to dilute the bile. You could do some charcoal too. Charcoal could help. Charcoal soaks up bile. Remember, if you're constipated, be real careful with charcoal because it'll constipate you more. You got to fix the constipation first. But anyway, zinc and bile. Zinc helps increase bile production. If you get nauseous from zinc, either eat more next time, or if you do get nauseous after you've taken zinc and you've already eaten, eat more. If you have morning sickness, eat. If you're getting morning sickness a lot, you probably need more protein in your diet. There's a saying I have about this whole thing. When in doubt, eat more protein. What would that give you? Protein, zinc, taurine. Protects you from vitamin A toxicity as much. Doesn't make it go away. It protects you better. Okay. Ellen asks if the fat in the diet helps vitamin A to absorb, right? Correct. Yes. What is your take on the fat consumed from whole foods, nuts, seeds, minced meat? Should it be avoided or minimized if one is still in recovery? The easy answer to this. So I'm not. Don't make a mistake about what we try to do here. We are not pushing what people might call a low-fat diet. We are talking about a low to no. Well, okay, wait. Let me rephrase this. If you're underweight, you're going to need more fat than I'm about to talk about. Let me repeat that. If you are underweight and you have trouble keeping weight on, I talk about this in the over and under type section in the Love Your Liver program. Undertypes need some more fat in their diet. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that. There's two different types. We have two overs and unders. And if you're an under and you try to eat like an over and you do no added fats and all that stuff, you're going to lose weight. You're not going to feel good. You can't do that. Obviously, underweight people have a problem with making body fat, whereas overweight people are very good at it. And those two things are both related to the liver, but they show up in different, as they call it, phenotypes, physical expressions. They show up in two different body types, if you will. Okay? So 95% of people, if you're in America and you look around, you know that 95% of people are overweight types. It's very obvious. But there's the 5% or whatever that are the undertypes, the underweight types. So generally for overtypes, which is what I'm going to talk about, I just told you about the undertypes, the underweight types. Overtypes would do best to minimize added fats. Added fats. When people talk about, oh, you need to add omega-3s and oh, your omega-3 to omega-6 balance is off and all of that started when we started isolating fats. We started making oils, seed oils, industrially processed oil. So I don't care if it's cold pressed. I don't care. Oils caused humanity huge health problems. So do we need to argue about omega-3s and omega-6s and seed oils and da-da-da? No, just don't add it to your food. Then you solve all the problems. Okay, minimal. Can you use some? Sure. If you're an overtype, I mean minimal for cooking, right? Minimal. Most days, I don't even know if most days when I'm eating on point, I don't think I add any fats to my diet. Does that mean I eat low fat? Here's a tip. If you're eating beef, you're not low fat. By definition, like you're well over low fat. If you're eating nuts and seeds, you're not eating low fat. So, nobody here ever said or should ever say that I'm advocating a low fat diet. I'm advocating a low or minimal or no added fats diet. But minimal is all right. I think minimal is all right. We get our fats from whole foods. Okay. Now, I do think with beef and other things like that, like if you were to look at humans and go, well, fat humans are unhealthy. Okay. So then shouldn't we think the same thing of cows? Shouldn't we be like extra fat cows, marbled meat, are not healthy? So generally, and here's a thing that happens in red meat in the studies. The leaner the cut of meat in beef, I'm talking about beef here, I'm not talking about chicken. The leaner the cut of beef, the more zinc it has in it. Even on the same animal. That's a good thing. So the leaner would be less fat, more zinc. Well, that's nice. But generally, like I'm not as worried about the fat in whole foods as I am concerned about the added fats. If that helps. I mean, like there's research out there on like, let's say peanuts. Peanuts are high in fat, right? And avocados, that's basically like a fat fruit. Avocados are so weird. I swear avocados must have come from another planet. Nothing else on this planet is like avocados. So weird. Just when you think about them. I love when the paleo people are like, yeah, you can have a high-fat diet of avocados. And you're like, you ever seen an avocado tree, bro? People act like these weird paleo, keto, high-fat foods are just available everywhere. And it's like, oh, no. Oh, no. You just take away all your refrigerators and all your plastic packing and all that stuff. And you're on a natural, I call it a natural living because the paleo word is so cringe to me now. But if you were just going out and you didn't have refrigeration and you lived in a warm area, there's hardly any fat around, even on the animals. Like, people have to cook game meat differently because it's so lean that you'll cook it to a crisp if you cook it normally like you do fatty beef. It's different. Anyway, there's people out there now, pseudo experts, new people to this process, trying to say that it is fat that causes bile dumping. This is true. And that therefore you should eat lots of fat to detox vitamin A. That is absolutely, that will end in disaster. And I will be here pointing and laughing when it doesn't end right. Here's what a high-fat diet does in terms of bile. This is why keto people may get their symptoms better. Keto and high-fat carnivore and all this stuff, their symptoms may improve. But eventually things go off the rails. Absolutely go off the rails. A high-fat diet will cause bile dumping. A high-fat diet, well, first of all, in animal research, there's 3 ways that they tend to try to cause cholestasis, aka toxic bile leakage. High-fat diets, that's how they cause liver injury, that's one. Or high-protein diets. I'm sorry, low-protein diets. Sorry, that was wrong. Low-protein diets. The dangers of doing things live. High-fat diets or low-protein diets or high-fructose diets. Now, I'm not saying not to eat fruit. If you're eating whole fruit, you're fine. Especially low vitamin A fruit is what I'm talking about. Apples, bananas, green grapes. Not red grapes, green grapes. I mean, can you eat some red grapes? I mean, I'm not, this is not, people think this is like so crazy strict and stuff like that. No, it's just if you can make better choices, if you were going to eat potatoes, you might want to eat white potatoes, well peeled, well cooked, instead of sweet potatoes. It's not that hard. You just make better choices, you know? But yeah, so they're going to absorb more of the bile. So they dump the bile, but they also reabsorb more of it. So anything toxic that their body tried to put into the bile to get rid of, to poop it out, is getting reabsorbed in the guts. It goes right back through, it's called entero, gut, hepatic, liver, circulation. There's a loop in your guts. So what this loop is, enterohepatic circulation, you can look it up. It's a legit thing. They show that it exists with drugs. They give you drugs, and then they see that the drugs keep cycling in this loop. What it is, your liver makes bile. The bile goes down into your guts, entero. And then your guts reabsorb the bile. That goes into what's called the portal venous system, or the portal vein, referring to the liver portal. It goes right back to the liver, where the liver then does its filtering job. The liver is a filter. Don't ever let anybody tell you it's not. The definition of a filter is to take something out of something else. That's what the liver does. It's a filter. Same with the kidneys. It's by definition what they do. Absorb bile and absorb toxins and everything goes right back to the liver. The liver then filters out all the toxins and the bile that it just reabsorbed and redumps it. So do you see how this is like normally in a standard American diet? They did research on this. You only poop out on a standard diet about 5% of your bile a day. 95% of it is reabsorbed and stays in this loop. So the more toxic your bile is, imagine this, the more damage it's doing in this loop. It's just hot lava, just damaging everything it touches. 5% gets pooped out. So imagine, let's say somebody on a carnivore diet, an all muscle meat carnivore diet, which is not a terrible, all muscle meat carnivore diet is a very low toxin diet. Absolutely. But there's no soluble fiber or charcoal or anything that would absorb bile. So it's even less fiber than a standard American diet. Standard American diet, you only poop out 5% of that bile. And that's with the fiber that's in it. So imagine how little bile leaves you when you're on a no fiber diet. Let's just say less than 1%. It's just a guess. But I mean, there's nothing to absorb the bile. And a carnivore diet would be not low fat. So they just recirculate it. And so what happens is the liver stores toxins. The toxins even that they have from the beginning are not leaving. And we're all exposed to toxins every day. So you're just concentrating it more and more and just recirculating 99% of that bile instead of 95% of it. It's just going in this loop. What we are trying to do is to figure out how to bind more of the bile, how to fix the bile pathway so the bile stays in the gut. We're not trying to do excessive amounts of fats to reabsorb the bile. And we're trying to do things like soluble fiber. And for the people who can do it, who aren't excessively constipated, charcoal, things to bind the bile. So we increase the excretion of bile over 5%. So, but like nuts, right? I'm not that worried about, okay, so I wouldn't do tons of nuts and seeds. I would not make them, like I probably eat a quarter cup of almonds 2, maybe 3 times a week. And on the rare occasion where I make a kind of low vitamin A salad with the family for dinner, I might sprinkle a tablespoon of sunflower seeds on it. Oh, and yes, I do make a dressing with some avocado oil. So yes, I do use added fats, but like I think we had the salad for the first time in a month this week. It's not something common. So and ground beef, it would be better to get it leaner or to drain the fat from the ground beef. So if you get high fat ground beef, just cook it and drain the fat. That's it. Any fat that you can easily get rid of would be good to do. If you can make a whole food choice of a lower fat thing over a higher fat thing, that'd be a good choice. So I hope that answers it. But zinc carnosine on that last question, if you try it to help with like GERD or ulcers or that stuff and it helps, great. If you try, don't use it to try to replete your zinc. It doesn't work. It doesn't trigger the bile dump, right? So I'm going to tell you that it's bile in your stomach that causes ulcers and GERD. Your stomach's designed for stomach acid. Why would stomach acid hurt your stomach? That doesn't make any sense. Your stomach's designed for it. It's bile that's going backwards up into your stomach. So the weird thing here is we know zinc picolinate and other zincs. My brother vomited because of zinc gluconate. We know that other zincs stimulate bile dumping, and then it can make people nauseous or vomit. But they're using zinc carnosine to help fix GERD and ulcers, H. pylori and stuff like that. So makes me wonder, what is that zinc carnosine doing overall? Is it slowing things down? I don't know. But the whole goal would be, what we do is we fix the bile going into the stomach. That's what we do. So then eventually somebody would be able to get off the zinc carnosine if they were using it. If it had helped them, I tell them, keep using it. We'll fix you in other ways, and then you'll eventually be able to get off of it. Okay? So, wait, somebody did who is this? Renas. What are my thoughts on sauerkraut as a source of probiotics and fiber? Okay. It's a big question. Thank you for the super chat, Renas. I hope I'm saying your name right. Sauerkraut. Yeah. So we'll go over the different pieces of it. In the program, I have some probiotics articles. For those of you who are in the program, if you want to find it, just in the search bar, in the main part, just type in probiotics and you'll find my articles. Okay. We talk about different types: putrefactive, mixed, fermentative. Probiotics in sauerkraut tend to be a lot of the lactobacillus genre, species, whatever you want to call it, which not everyone gets along with. I personally never got along with sauerkraut or fermented or cultured dairy, yogurt, kefir. Always made me really bloated. That's not a good sign. If a probiotic food is making you feel bloated and gross, that's the wrong probiotic. Okay. There's very few exceptions where we might do a little while of letting it work itself out, like Sunfiber. But in general, a lot of bloating or gas with probiotics is bad. An example, I used to think I was being real healthy. I would go at lunchtime when I didn't have lunch at my old office. I'd go to the health food store. I'd buy, what was it? It was a quart. It was a 32-ounce thing of kefir. It's like 1,000 calories. And I'd drink that for lunch. I was like, Jesus, 1,000 calories or something. I should be good. And I would be bloated for 6 hours. There was like 13 or 14 different strains of probiotics in there, and most of them were lactobacillus. And finally, after a while, I went, you know what? That's not a good sign that I'm getting so bloated. I'm going to stop that. And then I started realizing that, oh, this happens with yogurt. Oh, this happens with fermented vegetables for me. I'm not going to do those. And now that I've figured out more about the kind of dysbiosis types, I understand exactly why. So there's the lactobacillus issue. If people feel, I had one woman, she told me I was doing fermented vegetables every day and I started losing weight and my stomach was flat and da da da. Well, women tend to be fermentative types and they do better with lactobacillus. These are tendencies. So if anybody says I say all people are this way, anybody who works with me and hears me talk should know that I don't ever say all people are one way. Does almost everybody you know have vitamin A toxicity? Probably to some extent. They're toxic in other ways, and it's the liver injury that they had that caused the vitamin A toxicity to develop over time. But the liver is the root cause. So can people damage their liver all sorts of ways? Yeah. So there's not just one. So other things about sauerkraut being cabbage. Well, first of all, if you were going to make sauerkraut and you had to choose between light green cabbage or red, aka purple cabbage, class, what's the better color to choose? The light green. It's not as brightly, strongly dark colored as the red cabbage. So this should be something that you're just thinking about. Green cabbage is oftentimes it's almost white, right? That would, in terms of vitamin A, that would be okay. Like cauliflower, right? Cauliflower's white. The problem with, let's say, cauliflower and cabbage, very high in sulfur. As opposed to what everyone on the internet says, sulfur does not help you detox. Sulfur slows down your detox. It absolutely does. As an example, onions are high in sulfur. Garlic is high in sulfur. If you eat these things, it's coming out your pores. It's coming out your breath. Why is your body working so dang hard to get rid of it? Right? Because your body doesn't want it. So that's one of the issues with cabbage or other cruciferous vegetables. In terms of sulfur, what are the high sulfur foods? Because sulfur's in all foods. It's in meat, red meat, chicken. It's in there. Are we trying to, people get me confused. They start thinking I'm saying to avoid all of these things. You can't. But the highest sulfur foods that we generally try to avoid or minimize or reduce on the program, egg whites. So we don't eat egg yolks because of the vitamin A and the choline, which is, egg yolks are perfectly designed to bring in vitamin A, absorb it, and shove it into your liver. They are perfectly designed for that. I have an eggs and choline thread on Twitter that goes over this and goes over how lots of diseases and early death have been connected with eating more egg yolks. That's the problem. It's not cholesterol. I'm not even going to talk about cholesterol. So, egg whites are very high in sulfur. This is why, for those of you who back in the 80s and 90s remember people doing egg white protein a lot and having these horrendous sulfur farts, that's egg white protein, tons of sulfur. So we got egg whites in terms of sulfur. We've got cruciferous vegetables, which would be broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, maca. And then we have the allium vegetables, garlic, onion, leeks, chives, that kind of stuff. So those are the real high sulfur foods. Generally, eating less of those would be better. And so if we were talking about sauerkraut as a source of probiotics, in terms of fiber, cabbage doesn't have that much soluble fiber. I believe it's mostly insoluble. And what I'm about to tell you in terms of the dose of it, I don't think people need to eat. If you're doing sauerkraut for probiotics, you only need like a forkful a day. Like a forkful. One fork, eat it, you're done. In terms of the number of probiotics on that fork compared to pills, it dwarfs. Fermented vegetables dwarf supplements in terms of the number of probiotics on it. So you don't have to eat a bowl of it, just a forkful. If you were doing something like kefir for the probiotics, a swig, a swallow. That's it. You don't need to you're not doing yourself any favors by eating tons and tons of this stuff. Eat real food. I mean, yeah. So can these things be used? Yes, but first thing I would say is if you're like me and you eat fermented foods or cultured dairy and you feel terrible, you feel bloaty, don't eat it. That's a bad sign. I'm not a fan of the sulfur in cruciferous vegetables. And the fiber thing in terms of sauerkraut, if you're doing a forkful a day, that's kind of going to be irrelevant in terms of the amount. It's not going to do much. It is there, but it's not going to do much. So, Reynas, I hope that answers your question. Just, one of the things you could do to test out, you're like, well, I don't really notice if I only do a forkful of sauerkraut, I don't really notice how I feel. I don't feel any different. Well, then you might want to try eating a bowl of it and see how you feel when you get an excess amount. If you feel better, great. It's perfect. Or if you feel nothing or you feel better, fine. If you feel worse when you eat a lot of it, then you can kind of know that that effect is still happening to you, just lower than you might perceive it. And maybe you want to make a better choice, or a different choice, I should say. Okay. Hope that answers that question. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. And then next one, Ellen, what about sugar and fruit? Does it slow down the detox pathways? Are they to be avoided when in recovery? If you don't feel good on fruit, or if you feel like fruit makes you crave other bad things, then maybe you're not ready for it yet. Generally, I love bananas for the potassium on this program. Bananas would be an example of what part of fruits and vegetables are okay to eat. The parts that are white, off-white, light green. We just talked about light green with the cabbage, right? Pick the light green cabbage over the red cabbage. Stuff like that. Cauliflower does have a lot of sulfur, but it's white. Bananas. People might look at bananas and go, oh my God, bananas must be high in vitamin A because they've got a yellow peel. Well, you don't eat the peel, right? You eat the whitish off-white part on the inside. Apples, off-white. Beans, in the middle, they're white, right? The outside part of the apples, does it have some polyphenols and carotenoids in it, plant vitamin A? Yeah, but it's just the outer part. It's not all the way through it. So if you want to peel your apples, Grant Genereux peels his apples. I don't. I just call me lazy. Say that I just don't think it's worth it to do that. I actually feel like I feel better. Certain putrefactive types, dysbiosis, do better with more insoluble fiber as compared to soluble fiber. Well, apple peels are insoluble fiber. I'm a putrefactive. I feel better with the apple peel than I do without it. Okay? So, a lot of people don't get anywhere near the amount of potassium they need. Vitamin A blocks potassium channels. I have an article in the Advanced Detox program about this inside the network. Copper depletes potassium. And if you took vitamin D supplements or cod liver oil and you stored a bunch of vitamin D3 in your liver, rat poison, then it's going to come out. And vitamin D, in my vitamin D thread on Twitter, vitamin D depletes potassium, vitamin D supplements, oral vitamin D. So a lot of people are running a lot of toxic stuff in their system that blocks or depletes potassium. What can we do short term? We can replete your potassium. We can make sure you have enough potassium running through your system. What do we do long term? We get all the toxicity out of you. We get the vitamin A out of you. We get the excess copper out of you. We get the old vitamin D supplements out of you. The old vitamin D supplements will basically come out of you if you simply stop taking it. It just takes time. It might take 6 months, might take a year. That's my estimate on it based on seeing lots of hair tests and doing this for a while. It takes about probably a year to get the vitamin D supplements that you stored in your liver and your body fat out of you. That's my best estimate. So, I'm not too worried about fruit. Like, honestly, if somebody, I eat 4 bananas most days. 2 before I work out, 2 after I work out. The absolute best time to eat carbs, if you want them to affect you negatively the least in terms of body fat and other stuff, I'm definitely an over type where I can, if I am doing the wrong things, I gain weight. Some people, if they do the wrong things, they lose weight. That's very much an over and under type. I'm an over type. So the best time for me to eat carbs, sugar, is before and after my workout. Or even if I was going to eat them during the workout, that would be something too. But I don't work out long enough to need carbs during a workout. So I don't think it's that big a deal in terms of if you're eating apples or bananas, unless you notice that you have blood sugar problems with them specifically. I don't see it as being a problem, the whole food sugar. I'm not saying it's not a problem. My buddy practically killed himself being a fruitarian, eating 20 or 30 bananas one day and then 20 or 30 oranges another day. That's a disaster. But if you're eating sane amounts of fruit and you're not noticing distinct negative symptoms when you eat it, I'm not worried about fruit, basically. Low vitamin A fruit, not mangoes and papayas and, I love pineapple. I wish it wasn't yellow. So if you can get the pineapple that's a lot closer to white, that would be better. Generally, the sweeter the fruit, the more fructose it has in it. Fructose is very sweet. So you can kind of also go by the color of the fruit and you can go by the sweetness of the fruit. Like bananas aren't really that sweet. They are, but they're not, like apples are not super sweet compared to other fruit. Like you have a date and an apple. There's no comparing them in terms of sweetness, right? So, okay, Gretchen says, for someone who doesn't eat a lot of fiber, is activated charcoal enough to soak up bile? Yes. Are there added benefits to fiber beyond what activated charcoal does? If it helps you poop, this is the thing about fiber in the research, right? Everybody reads the research and they go, you need fiber to poop. If you're not pooping well, eat more fiber. That does not always work. There is one study where a doctor took women who had, what did they call it? Chronic idiopathic constipation. So long-term constipation that they didn't know the cause of. And this doctor thought, well, it's the fiber causing them to be constipated. Okay. So we put these women on a very minimal fiber or zero fiber diet. And over time, all of them started to poop more. Not a ton more, but they did start to poop better. Why would this have happened? Why do some people feel better when they eat lots of fiber and they poop really well? Why is that? The answer is in terms of toxic bile theory, the answer is very easily answered. I'm not going to link the study today. I've linked it before, probably multiple times. There was a study where they looked at how much bile was in the poop of people who were constipated, people who had diarrhea, and people who were normal. Which you got to be concerned about the normal in conventional medicine about pooping. They're like, constipation is like, what did they say? As long as you poop once every 3 days, it's something like that, you're not constipated. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like absolute minimum, you should be pooping once a day. Absolute minimum. If not, you're quite constipated. Perfect pooping? Perfect pooping would be for every meal you eat, you should poop once. That would be perfect pooping. It's called the mass motion complex. Every meal that you eat in your guts, there should be space between that meal and your next meal, right? Hours of space. If they're all backing up into one poop, you got a traffic jam, you got a log jam, right? That shouldn't be happening unless things are moving slow. Your car shouldn't be running into the car ahead of it. I know most people do not poop this well. I'm not saying I even poop this well, but in a perfect world, you should have space in your guts between every meal. So you should poop once for every meal. Mass motion complex means when you eat, it moves the meal in front of it further forward. So everything's moving through your guts synchronized, and there should be space between every meal and every poop. That's a perfect world. I'm not saying if you're here listening to this, you're not perfect. If you're here listening to this, you're probably not as healthy as you want to be. So don't be upset that you're not pooping perfectly. This is what we're here to fix. This is part of fixing you. So anyway, constipated people in their guts had the least amount of bile. I'm gonna. These are approximate numbers from the study, and these are just units. I don't remember the units. Constipated people had about 200 units of bile in their poop. Okay. Diarrhea folks had something like 1,200 units of bile in their poop. The control people, the normal people, had about 500 units of bile in their poop. Okay. Constipated had the least. Diarrhea had the most. Normal people were between those. What does soluble fiber do? It soaks up bile. What I'm going to tell you that study on the poop and the bile showed was that it's the amount of bile in your guts that triggers the pooping movement. Okay? Constipated people don't have enough bile in their guts touching the intestines to trigger it. So they don't poop as fast. There's not as much bile to trigger the movement. It also tells you that, doesn't that kind of say that your body really doesn't want that bile in your intestines? If more bile gives you diarrhea, your body doesn't want it. It's a waste product. You want to get rid of it. It's not that bile is all bad. You just don't want it. Once you make it, you want it to go into your intestines, do whatever it does in there that everybody thinks is so wonderful, and then you want to crap it out. It's very simple. You want to make the bile, you want it to go into your intestines, you want to crap it out. You do not want to reabsorb it. That's why we don't do high-fat diets. Simple. High fat increases your reabsorption of bile. So activated charcoal so why does activated charcoal, let's go into this. Why does activated charcoal constipate people so well, so potently, and why does activated charcoal help fix diarrhea? Because it soaks up bile. It grabs the bile and it holds it on the inside so it's not touching your intestines so much. It kind of nullifies the bile in terms of that effect. So if you don't have a lot of bile in your intestines to begin with, and then you drop charcoal in there, you're going to get constipated. If you got too much bile floating around in your intestines causing you to have diarrhea, you throw down the charcoal, it soaks it up, diarrhea gets better. Soluble fiber. The issue is, so most of the time activated charcoal doesn't cause you to dump bile. Soluble fiber does cause you to dump bile. Soluble fiber also soaks up bile. One person A, the effect of dumping bile might be a lot more than the effect of soaking up bile. Person B, the soaking up bile may be a lot bigger effect than the dumping bile. This is why we can't say that there's a certain amount of soluble fiber for everybody, or a certain type of soluble fiber. If you have people who are not pooping well, like the guy's study on fiber, where he had these women tend to get more constipated than men. Women don't make as much bile as men. Coincidentally, women tend to get more constipated more easily than men. Do you see the connection now? So that study where they took out the fiber, the women started pooping better because effectively the bile's effectiveness in terms of touching their intestines and helping them poop became better. They didn't soak it all up. But fiber also gives your poop bulk, right? Fiber gives you the bulk of your poop, so your intestines have something to push against. Soluble fiber tends to gel, so it maintains its shape, if you will. It holds its shape, so your intestines have something to push against. This is why carnivore people often, if they're actually digesting well, they don't poop that much because you digest most of the meat. So then all of a sudden, not only do they have no fiber, but they're digesting most of what is in their food, so they're not even going to poop that much. How are they going to get rid of this bile? They're not. It's just going to keep recirculating. Now, they can have what those diets do often in the early stages is they reduce the amount of toxins in the blood, so people see their symptoms improve, their superficial symptoms, eczema, other things, their brain is clearer. Okay. Over time, as their liver keeps storing more and more toxic stuff, eventually that dam's going to break. The liver's going to be full, and there's no place else to store it. And so it goes into the blood. And this is where when people go, but I've been doing this diet for 10 years. It was amazing. I don't understand why all of a sudden, this disease showed up. It couldn't be my diet because I've been doing the diet for 10 years. Well, this is why I do chronic long-term stuff. This is what I want to see. I need to find the study, but there was a study on dietary stuff where they asked people questions about their long-term diets. And it was either 10 or 20 years later, the people who identified as low carbers, the men who identified as low carbers actually had the highest rates of diabetes in the study. Now, how would that happen unless there was a lot? People will say, but low carb fixes diabetes. Did you catch what I just said? Short-term things can look better. Long-term, once the stuff hits the fan and the liver's full of the toxins and the bile, it all just blows up. This is the part that most people cannot grasp. If you had a garage that you filled, so if you had extra stuff in your house and you could put it into your garage and you fill up your garage is full, and now you have no other place to put the stuff. Where does that stuff go? It goes in your house. You're back to the same problem you had at the beginning, but it was better for a while you still had storage room in the garage, right? You're just prolonging the problem by shoving it all in the garage. Okay. It's like you can hide your hoarding while you have enough space. Why is everybody buying, another analogy, why is everybody getting storage containers these days or buying storage rooms? Because they can't fit the crap in their house. We'll do an analogy in the body to toxins and then start thinking about cancer and tumors and cysts. Why is your body making more storage areas? Because it's full of toxicity and it has no place else to store it. Why do you get fatty liver? Why is your liver making more fat storage? Your liver's not supposed to be fat. Maybe it's fat-soluble toxins. Imagine that. Fatty tumors. So anyway, so Gretchen said, thank you, Dr. Smith, and Happy New Year. Yes, thank you to all of you for being here. Happy New Year to all of you. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas season. Remember the reason for the season. But yeah, activated charcoal is amazing at soaking up bile. Activated charcoal is amazing at soaking up toxins. It's so good at its job that it can constipate. Soluble fiber can do the same thing for people. So you have to watch. First of all, if you're constipated, if you're not pooping once a day, don't even touch charcoal. Don't even touch it. Don't even think about it. You got to be pooping better first. If you try eating more soluble fiber and it constipates you more, you poop less. If you eat more soluble fiber and you poop even less, go back the way you came. Don't do that. You need to poop. Pooping is key to detox. Pooping is your most important route of detox. I will not argue this point. Your kidneys are an overflow detox system, and your skin is the last resort detox system. The less we use your skin as detox and the less we use your kidneys as detox, the healthier you're going to be. We want your liver doing the main detox, making bile. Just remember, your liver doesn't technically, if you want to think of detox as actually getting rid of poison, like the actual act of getting rid of poison, your liver doesn't actually detox in that way, if you know what I mean. Your liver makes bile. The bile has to escape your body to actually technically lower the toxicity in you. Does that make sense? Like it's not over until it's over. The poison, if your liver makes bile, you remember the enterohepatic circulation, your liver makes bile, your liver's doing people are like the biotransformation and the detoxification and conjugation and da, da, da. Okay, cool. It's putting all that crap into the bile. Like a sewage treatment plant has waste, right? It doesn't mean that. So a sewage treatment plant processing all this toxicity coming in, it has the leftover product. It has to put it somewhere. Well, your liver does that. It puts it into the bile. So then it dumps the bile into your intestines, and then it can get reabsorbed. So did you detox at all? If it didn't leave you? Do you see what I'm saying? People are like, I'm taking this herb for my liver to detox. It doesn't do anything unless you get rid of the bile. Unless you get rid of that bile that the liver made, it didn't technically do anything. You could just be running it around in circles. Okay? But activated charcoal and soluble. So what do we want to do first? We need to be pooping first. Pooping first. And then we can start working on soaking up the bile in the poop. Let me give you an example. I had somebody contact me on Twitter yesterday. And she'd been obviously following my stuff, and she was catching the gist of it. And she said, well, when I have flare-ups of her, I think she said the like fibromyalgia, basically. When she would have flare-ups of it, her symptoms would get real bad. Her poop would become pale, and she would get constipated. So not only was she constipated, but her poop was very pale. And this was when she would flare her symptoms, her systemic symptoms. So let me tell you what was going on. This is toxic bile theory right here. When she flared, whatever caused it, more of her bile was going back into her blood, causing her systemic symptoms with the toxic bile in her blood. That bile that should have gone down into her intestines was not going there. So then her bile was pale, really pale poop, not yellow poop, but pale like tan poop. There's not enough bile making it to your intestines. And if there's not enough bile in your intestines, what did we just talk about? Constipation. This is how it all works. This is what the research says. This all makes, when you put it all together, which is what I'm doing, if people want this to just come out as one big study where they explain it all to you, no, they're never going to do that. You think they're ever going to tell you how they poisoned you? No. But that's how toxic bile theory works. Now, if somebody said, oh my gosh, when I have a flare-up of my ulcerative colitis, I get tons of diarrhea and I have blood in my poop. Okay, what's going on there? They have tons of toxic bile going into their intestines. It's burning holes in their gut. They're bleeding. And their body is desperately saying, get this crap out of here. And so it doesn't even hold on to it long enough to extract the water and make it poop. So you're just getting watery poop with blood in it. This is toxic bile theory. So one would be great to use charcoal in, and the constipation one, no. Is it all caused by bile? Yes. So I saw 2 super chats. Israel asks, does Sunfiber count as soluble fiber, and can it constipate if too much is taken? So this is kind of, I get into this in the articles in the network. I would count it as soluble fiber at the start. I would. It is technically a soluble fiber. The difference in Sunfiber is it doesn't gel. So it's different in terms of, but it has been shown in research to really improve constipation. You have a soluble fiber that improves constipation consistently. What's it probably doing then? It's getting more bile to stay in the guts. That's how you would improve constipation. So could it cause constipative too much is taken? Probably. One of the symptoms that after the first 2 weeks, there's the first 2 weeks I go over for those of you who are new here, we have very distinct ways of adding things. I go over a 2-week introductory period of Sunfiber in the Love Your Liver program. If you're going to go out there and you're like, oh, Dr. Smith said Sunfiber, I'm going to go buy it and start at 1 scoop a day. You might feel like absolute hell doing that. This is not a game. We are not the jump in the deep end type of people here. I jump in the deep end to test it for people so I know, because that's the good scientists experiment on themselves ethically first before they would ever do it on anybody else. That's what I do. And after I did it, and after I started getting feedback from people, I decided that Sunfiber must be taken very slowly. In the beginning, just like, you remember how I told you about beans? 2 tablespoons for 2 weeks to allow the gut biome to adapt to it. We might do a similar experiment or introductory phase with other things too. Lactoferrin, Sunfiber, these things. But could it constipate if too much is taken? Paradoxical reactions can happen with just about anything. Yes, absolutely. And by paradoxical, it means unexpected. So this is the important thing that a lot of practitioners don't get. If somebody came to me and I was going, well, let's say my experience had been, I've never heard of Sunfiber constipating somebody. Let's just say I said that. I'm making this up. This is a scenario. I've never heard of that. Let's just say I said that. I've never heard of that. And somebody comes to me and they say, I took Sunfiber and it constipated me. What do most practitioners do? Most of you out there have seen them do this. Most practitioners will go, no, it can't. It doesn't. No, it can't do that. It won't do that. That's not how it works. And they completely deny the experience that you're telling them. You're saying, and let's say you're a very good experimenter and you tried taking it and it constipated you, and then you stopped it for a while and you thought, let me try it again. And you tried it again and it constipated you. Maybe you did that 2 or 3 times and you go to this practitioner and you go, this caused this in me. And they deny it. No, that's all in your head. It can't do that. Like, how many of you have had doctors tell you this about your medication side effects? No, that doesn't happen. You must be making it up. So if somebody came to me and they said, I tried Sunfiber a couple times and both times I got up to a certain dose and it constipated me, what's up with that? And I'd say, I don't know, but don't take that much, right? I'm not going to deny their experience. I'm going to say, that's weird. That's weird. I haven't heard of that before. And in the, my mindset is, I don't know everything in the world. I don't know why that could have happened to you, but if you are telling me that this is what it does to you, and I have made the judgment that that is not a good thing, then I will say, okay, sorry to hear that. Don't take it anymore. And then I legitimize their experience. And I learn something. And I go, maybe I should watch for this again in the future. I don't know why more practitioners don't act this way. Like actually listening to their clients and saying, oh, well, I guess I don't know everything about this. Maybe this could happen in a certain situation. I have people who can't take any supplements because every single supplement reacts with them. These are the type of people who get fired from their doctors. They're natural doctors too, or they're natural practitioners, because the natural practitioners go, you react badly to everything I try with you. I guess I'm just going to have to fire you because none of my tools work. What do? Well, we start going, well, if you can't take this stuff, it's going to be even more important for you to avoid the toxicity stuff and try to get some of these nutrients from foods that you do tolerate. We work around it. I honestly don't understand why more practitioners don't do this. I want them to, so more people can help others. Now, there is one other practitioner who does this. That's Nathan Weens. He is, I trained him, Weens. I always forget his I see the word and I go Weens. Nathan's great. He's gone through and helped me go through all of my seminars in the past, webinars that I've done about hair testing and about blood testing. And he's worked with me. He's had a couple of, several clients of mine. I'm training him to do what I do so we can help more people. I will eventually in the future have seminars on how to do this. But for those of you practitioners out there who are listening to this, just take the philosophy first. Listen to people. If they tell you something makes them feel bad, don't force it on them. Do not do the BS line of, oh, it'll get better. Just keep taking it. I hit my foot with a hammer. It hurts. I hit it again. It hurts. Doc, every time I hit my foot with a hammer, it hurts. Oh, just keep doing it. You'll toughen up. No, this is not how it works. So anyway, I need to get to this other. But good question, Israel. Thank you for the super chat. Yes, I would count it as soluble fiber overall. And could it constipate? Could it constipate if too much was taken? Absolutely. But I haven't heard much of that. But I'm not going to deny that it could happen. The one thing I will tell people about Sunfiber is past the 2 weeks introduction, what we have seen is if people get to too much for them, they could start feeling a little bloated. So guess what they should do if they feel that? You just back off to the dose that doesn't do that. It's not hard. Right? Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that or do less. Okay. So M&M Professional Window Cleaners Limited asks, are Himalayan salt lamps any good? I mean, I got one right here. Do I know if they do anything magical to the air? No. It's a pretty little lamp. Maybe it's it's throwing off negative ions and what, I don't know. What would, the only way that I would think that it was throwing off negative ions is, I mean, I leave this thing on 24 hours a day. It's always on. Wouldn't these lamps like slowly shrink in size if they were actually throwing off parts of them as negative ions? Wouldn't they shrink? I mean, that makes, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the chemistry of it, but it would seem to make sense to me that they should shrink over time if they're actually throwing stuff from them off into the air. That's just my chemistry was organic chemistry was not my thing. So what is the mechanism on how it works or how it benefits you? The idea is negative ions, like the heat of the bulb, the heat of the little, they still sell the incandescent, the old school type light bulbs. They still sell them in this size. So the size that goes up in there. Let me see if I have my other one. I actually have two of them. I have another one over here running. It really makes when I have the lights off in this room, it makes for a very nice kind of orange yellow light. So there's not a lot of blue light coming off of it. It's very nice to come in here and work. I like working in the dark a lot. I don't know. I just don't like the lights I have on right now. I don't like them on my eyes. They don't bother me like they used to. I have a blue light filter, piece of plastic over my computer, and but the LED lights, God, anyway. So yeah, it's the negative ions. If you looked up negative ions and health, you could find more on it. It's like one of the things about negative ions, they'll say like after a rainstorm and there's the lightning and that stuff, and then there's that smell of negative ions. They say that, that's like good for you. I don't know. I have not gone into the science on this. The science on negative ions and health, from what I've read, if people have other research you want to share with me, just remember, I'm always open to other research. But it seems that a lot of the negative ion research is people on blogs saying it's good for you, or companies that sell these things saying it's good for you. I don't see a lot of From what I've seen, it could be out there, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of like what I think of as solid research showing that it's good for you. So this is more, if somebody said, well, you can't have that up in your background or whatever, I'd say it doesn't bother. Okay, fine. I'll take it down. It doesn't bother me. Like, it's not, I don't think it's some magical, I don't walk into this room and go, like, I feel so much healthier now that I'm in this room. No, it doesn't. I don't notice anything from it. It's not a big thing. Be careful of ozone. People will say ozone makers and negative ions, like the ozonators on certain air purifiers and stuff like that. All I've ever heard from people, they'll say, oh, use it in your house while you're away. And then when you come home, turn it off. And you come into your house and my intuitive smell test on ozone is not good. I don't like the smell of it. And then if you leave it on while you're home, you'll start to get, or no, I'm sorry, it's not an ozonator. It's a negative ion generator. Sorry, not ozone. Don't breathe ozone like on a regular basis. Don't do that. That will kill you. I'm not talking about ozone IVs. I just talked to somebody the other day who said he did some ozone IVs and he felt better, which ozone oxidizes, which is how your body does most of your detox processes. So ozone could help. I can say that my mom with Parkinson's-like syndrome, she tried ozone IVs. They didn't do a thing for her. She tried hyperbaric chambers, didn't do a thing for her. Increasing her oxidative rate didn't seem to move the needle for her. But I just talked to somebody yesterday who said it did. And I said, well, if it's an oxidative treatment, so if you feel better from it, go ahead. I mean, if the juice is worth the squeeze, those aren't cheap treatments. So if you feel enough better from them to do it, go ahead. So where was I? I think that was it for that question. Should you get a Himalayan pink salt lamp? If you like the way they look, sure. They're not expensive, or they're not as expensive as a lot of lamps. I like the light. But other than that, I don't attribute any magical health benefits to it. Oh, so I was talking about the ionizers, the negative ionizers. Yeah, we have a couple of air filters in the house that have the negative ion things. And if I leave those on, it's not ozone, just negative ion generators. If I leave those on while we're home, I can smell it. And my head starts to not feel good after a while. Some people say it gives them headaches. There's something about the negative ion generators, like on air filters, I don't like it. I never turn it on. So this I don't smell. So that's the best I got for you. I do like the smell after the rain. So I will say that. So maybe there's differences in the negative ions that these different things are putting off. It's possible. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Barney, I missed your question. Sorry. Let's see if I want to make sure I didn't miss anything else because I got to wrap this up. Okay, Barney, sorry. We're getting back to you. Thank you for that super chat, Eminem. And Barney, here's yours. What is special about vitamin A compared to D, E, and K that makes it toxic and unsafe for humans? Appreciate your health info. Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you here, Barney. And it's a good question. Well, I go over the other fat-soluble vitamins in the program, especially in the Advanced Detox Network, where I think I go over more about vitamin E. Some people in the vitamin A detox world have started talking about how good they think vitamin E is. And I haven't brought this over to the main program, but I have research showing that when they gave rats or mice vitamin E, they stored up to 20 times more vitamin A in their liver. So in the research, people who don't see the long-term big picture, they'll say vitamin E in the research. I used to think this myself until I found the study that showed that vitamin E helped store vitamin A in the liver, kind of like choline in eggs. Vitamin E in studies would show a reduction in vitamin A toxicity symptoms in animals Okay. Pharmaceutical drugs can show a reduction of symptoms in people. That doesn't mean they're good for you. That doesn't mean what it's doing is good for you, right? So there's two ways that you can reduce your symptoms in toxic bile theory in terms of what your liver does. Right? Because you could reduce your symptoms by putting less toxins in, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about what the liver does. There's two ways that you could affect the liver that are not good for you that could reduce your symptoms for a while. Okay? One would be to take things like, let's say, a high-fat diet, like a keto diet or other high-fat carnivore diets, or that store things in your liver. So you can store more things in your liver. You can shove more things in your liver to get them out of the bloodstream where they cause your symptoms. Okay? If you got bad stuff in your bloodstream and it goes to your brain, you get mental symptoms. If you got bad stuff in your bloodstream and it goes to your heart, you get heart symptoms. You following me? So it's in the bloodstream where you feel it. Like, we don't feel our liver much, right? I mean, by the time you feel your liver, you got significant stuff going on in your liver. Like, significant. So you could reduce, let's say, your mental symptoms, your heart symptoms, your fatigue symptoms, whatever symptoms you got, you could reduce them potentially by taking in something that grabs onto vitamin A and other poisons in your blood, like fat or vitamin E or choline, and shove the stuff into your liver. So you take it out of the bloodstream, and then voila, you feel better. Okay. Or you could do things that slow down your bile production. So you don't make as much bile. If you don't make as much bile, you can't leak as much bile into your bloodstream. So then you feel better for a while. So if you're shoving more toxins into your liver to feel better, your liver's eventually, the dam's going to break and the stuff's going to hit the fan, and you're going to have health problems that you have no idea how to fix because the things that you've been doing for the last 1, 2, 5, 10 years all of a sudden aren't working anymore. And doubling down on them makes you worse. Or you can do things that slow down bile production. If you slow down bile production, you're going to store more crap in your liver. It's not going to escape your liver. And eventually the same thing's going to happen. Like, as an example, egg yolks. They contain vitamin A. I've posted research before that shows that vitamin A, specifically, when people eat vitamin A and vitamin D, they showed it was an animal study. The animals, they fed them vitamin A or vitamin D. Both of them cause them to produce less bile. Okay. Choline, which is phosphatidylcholine, is highest in eggs, is necessary. It's completely necessary to store vitamin A in the liver. It's part of the LRAT enzyme that stores vitamin A in the liver. So there's some people out there in the vitamin A detox world that are saying that eggs will help you detox vitamin A because some people said their symptoms went down when they started including more egg yolks. Hopefully you're tracking how I'm saying the mechanism of what egg yolks do. The vitamin A would reduce your bile production, and the choline in the egg yolks would store more of the vitamin A right back into your liver. And so their symptoms got a little better for a while. When the dam breaks, it's going to be ugly. This is not a game. Vitamin E in the research has been shown to reduce symptoms of vitamin A toxicity in animals. Another study showed that vitamin E can help you store up to 20 times more vitamin A in the liver in animals. So we just went over the mechanism of how that works. Funny coincidence here about the fat-soluble vitamins. Retinol is an alcohol. Vitamin D, cholecalciferol, calcitriol, alcohols. Vitamin E, tocopherol, tocotrienol, alcohols. I have gone over where I could find in the literature that these alcohols also turn into, there are aldehydes of them. So most of the time in your detox process, you take an alcohol, it goes through an enzyme like alcohol dehydrogenase, and it turns it into an aldehyde. And then the aldehyde gets turned into an acid via an enzyme called ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase. I don't have people try to eat vitamin E. I don't have people try to eat vitamin D. I don't have people try to eat vitamin A. And we're not seeing major deficiencies of these things. Do people believe that alcohols and aldehydes and acids are vital or essential to you living? That's a big question. I do think people need sunlight. The connections in terms of, I do think sunlight or UVB light is very helpful for health. Here's a funny coincidence. Vitamin D is said in the research to be antagonistic to vitamin A, and vice versa. Supposedly we have a vitamin D deficiency epidemic. And here I am saying we have a vitamin A toxicity epidemic. Vitamin D deficiency could be caused by vitamin A toxicity. What are we doing on the program? I just had a woman the other day tell me as she went into winter time, her vitamin D has actually gone up and she hadn't been doing tons of sun exposure because she's getting her vitamin A down and we're getting her zinc and her magnesium up and her body's fixing that vitamin D problem. We fix vitamin D by doing everything except taking vitamin D. We don't take rat poison pills here. And remember, vitamin D is sold as rat poison. It's called Terra D3, T-E-R-A D3, or D-Con, D-C-O-N. You can look them up. Active ingredient, cholecalciferol, vitamin D3, the same stuff they sell people in pills. It would be weird if they were trying to reduce the number of people by encouraging them and having all the doctors give them rat poison, wouldn't it? That would just be too obvious. Wouldn't people catch on that rat baits are some of the highest causes of dog poisonings and death? Because the dogs, these people will be like, but they're rats, they're nocturnal animals. They shouldn't have to, vitamin D3, of course, is a poison to them. And I'm like, okay, so what about the dogs that eat the rat bait and then die? And then, the people, when they over fortified milk with vitamin D at some dairies and people died. Oh, and in South Africa, where they researched vitamin D3 as a genocidal tool to kill people. This is all in my Twitter threads, folks. It kills mice and rats. It kills dogs. It kills people. Fat-soluble toxins accumulate over time. So people will be like, the acute dose of vitamin D is so high. Nobody ever takes that dose. Okay, cool. You could get shot by a really big gun and die quickly, or you could get shot 30 times with a 22. What if you got one 22 bullet in you a day? How many days would you last? Do you see what I mean? Chronic toxicity is a completely different animal than acute toxicity. But chronic toxicity is the one that sneaks up on you. That's the one that people do. That's why I didn't figure out vitamin A toxicity for so long when I was giving people vitamin A, because they've been taking it for a year or 2 or 3. It's hard to figure out chronic toxins. Like people who eat rice all the time and they're slowly giving themselves arsenic poisoning. You ever heard about how wives used to poison their husbands slowly with arsenic? Does this sound familiar? Could you be poisoning yourself slowly with vitamin A or vitamin D? There's only 2 supplements that the media likes to talk about two different types of supplements the media likes to talk about as being poison. Like when they try to badmouth supplements, you know, that's three things actually, but it's really only two things. They use three things. Beta-carotene, which is what? Vitamin A. You know, 3 major studies were stopped where they were giving people beta-carotene supplements because too many people were dying early. What other supplement can you talk about like that? 3 giant studies stopped early because beta-carotene, which is the exact same thing in a pill as it is in food, don't even begin to argue it. There's no evidence out there of any difference between synthetic beta-carotene in a pill and the natural stuff in food. You have no evidence. Anyone out there, please find it. Show it to me. It doesn't exist. They're the same thing. They use the same science to identify beta-carotene in foods as they use to identify that they made beta-carotene in a lab. If you use the same vision and processing skills in your brain to read words on a page and to read words on your computer, are they the same words effectively? Yes. Chemically, they're no different. So beta-carotene's one. Vitamin A is the next one. Retinol or retinol palmitate. The third one is vitamin E. So we have vitamin A, which I think I've presented enough evidence of its toxicity. We have vitamin D, which is sold as rat poison. And vitamin E is the next supplement that the media can find plenty of evidence that it can cause sickness and death. They're all alcohols. They can all be stored, chronically accumulate toxicity. Then we get into vitamin K. Vitamin K is not an alcohol. Vitamin K is a phyloquinone or a quinone. Vitamin K is supposed to be made. Well, I have two papers on mice where they showed that vitamin A could be used in mice to induce a simple vitamin K deficiency. They showed that they could very straightforwardly decrease the vitamin K in the animals by giving them vitamin A. It is your gut biome that is supposed to make your vitamin K. Right? Where do we find when people say, "Oh, you got to eat these foods for vitamin K"? There's almost always some sort of culturing going on. Natto, right? Cultured soybeans. They put bacteria in the soybeans to make the vitamin K. Does that sound like your gut? You have bacteria in your gut, right? The cheese. Okay, well, cheese involves culturing of some sort, right? Your gut biome, if you aren't making vitamin K, your gut biome's messed up. If your gut biome's messed up, you have toxic bile. I've gone over the research on that before. So it all connects. Vitamin K is different. And vitamin K seems to be that when people don't, here's what I can say about vitamin K. When I see people with very specific symptoms, bleeding gums, sensitive teeth, they don't seem to stop. If they start bleeding, they don't seem to stop as fast as they should, or the easy bruising. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes in those people, if they take some vitamin K, those symptoms improve or go away. And they don't feel worse. If these people continue doing the love your liver stuff and avoiding vitamin A and doing the other things in the program, eventually they don't have to take vitamin K anymore. What did we fix in them? We fixed their gut biome to make vitamin K now. So vitamin K, in a certain way, is it an essential nutrient? Yes. Is it different than the alcohols, retinol, tocopherol, cholecalciferol? Yes, it's not an alcohol. Interesting coincidence, right? So it's not just vitamin A that's toxic and unsafe for humans. Vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin E are problematic. To use a cringe word of the day. They're problematic. Vitamin K is in a whole nother beast, a whole nother category. And you shouldn't over time, as you fix yourself, if you're taking it now and you need it, vitamin K, keep taking it. If vitamin K benefits you right now, keep taking it. If you want to try some, see if it helps, go ahead. If you do the right things, like we've seen in people in the program, you won't need it eventually. That's the goal. So I'm going to wrap it up there today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you greatly for the super chats. I really appreciate that. I'm glad I could get to your questions early because of those. Remember, if you want unlimited questions from me, inside the Love Your Liver Network is the inner circle where I'm going to go and answer questions for probably an hour and a half or 2 hours right now. And then we can be a little more controversial in there. Then we have the new Madness of Modern Nutrition course. So for those of you who would like a more of an intro, if you're new to what I do, you can go to madnessofmodernnutrition.com. So go to madnessofmodernnutrition.com. You can read about it. You can join the course, and you get into kind of like an external part of the Love Your Liver network. And then if you want to join the rest of us inside where all the really good stuff is, then you want to join the Love Your Liver program. So again, if you want to work with me directly or Nathan, go to nutritiondetective.com and look on the consultations tab if you want to look into our supplements. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I missed something. If you want to look at our supplements, go to the shop tab in the website. Wait, MX Michael, I just saw your super chat. Whoa. $125. That's wow, man. I'm not going to miss this question. Let me get to the question. I'm sorry. I almost missed that. Wow. That's the one that I saw pop up and I didn't get to it. And I don't want to do that. My goodness, man. You should just join the inner circle. It's like $50 a month. So anyway, let me get to your question. Sorry, I almost missed that. Is it possible that the intestines become unsensitive to bile? Say if the mucus barrier widens to protect from corrosive bile and it doesn't stimulate bowel movement. That's an interesting question. I mean, what one of the ideas that the body makes mucus for is as a protective layer, but also one of the things that the body may make mucus for is as a route of detox, right? So when you have a snotty nose and a runny nose, what do you want to do? You want to blow it out. What color is earwax that's coming out of us? Most of the time, if you make a lot of earwax, it's yellow or orangish or brownish, right? Your body's getting rid of stuff. We have people on the detox program who will sweat. They turn their white bed sheets yellow. You ever seen guys with yellow in their armpits, right? And stains in their shirts. Okay, it's so funny how a lot of the things we excrete are yellow. Coincidence. So, Michael, I'm trying to understand now. If you're still here, I hope you're still here. I really hope you're still here. Let me know if you're still here. Put a comment down in the chat, Michael. I really hope you're still here because I want to expand on this because of your generosity. Is there something that's making you, if you're here, is there something that's making you think your intestines might be insensitive to bile? Is there some symptom? That's really what I mean, because when you think about it with celiac, I've explained this here before, but gluten in celiac people, gluten has been shown in the celiac folks to cause them to dump more bile than people who don't have celiac. Celiac, it's just disintegrating the villi, right? It's burning down the outer layer of their guts. Like that's toxic bile. They're dumping more of it. And they're probably more toxic in that bile. So in theory, could the mucus barrier widen to protect from corrosive bile and then it wouldn't stimulate bowel movement? Yeah. If you had too thick of a layer, right? This would kind of be, it's like, let me give another example that often happens in blood tests. When people first get sick, like let's say they get a virus, right? I don't know how much we've talked about viruses here, but virus theory as it stands today is complete garbage. Viruses are not out there floating around attacking you. If anything, they trigger, if they even exist, they trigger a bile dump in you, and that's what makes you sick. It's a self-poisoning triggered by something else. But in theory, like in white blood cell counts, when people first get sick, their white blood cell count goes way up. And then as they stay sick longer and longer, you see their white blood cell count go down. Think of it as like, I don't know, like in a war, right? The first clashes are going to be the biggest. And then over time, as you're running out of soldiers and you're running out of food and your weapons are getting, you're using up your ammo and you're running out of stuff, it fades away. So you have the big clash at the start, right? And then everything kind of fades down. So if you think of your white blood cells, your body's ability to mount a toxin cleanup or a defense, at the start, when you have more energy, it's going to be bigger. The response, you're going to see white blood cells go up. And then as people get chronically sick, autoimmunity, that kind of stuff, which is toxicity, we see white blood cell counts go down. So in theory, in the beginning of somebody getting sick, could they increase their mucus barrier? In theory, sure. Would their body eventually run out of the materials, the energy, the other stuff to do that? Yeah, it would eventually run out. Could too thick of a mucus barrier, in theory, if the bile couldn't touch the intestines, could it cause constipation in that manner? Yes. But generally, constipation is kind of a long-term thing. It's usually been going on a long time, so I wouldn't think that the thick bile theory is a common thing. I don't know that it exists, but would I think it's common? No. And if anything, it would be short term until the person got sick enough. Because see, you'd want to think that why would the body be making this excess bile? This excess mucus because of the toxic bile. Well, if the bile is going to just get more toxic if they don't know what to do to make it less toxic. And eventually that toxic bile is just going to eat through the mucus and the body's going to become less able to make mucus because it's getting sicker and sicker. So if that was a real thing, it would be in the beginning stages and then it would go away. But also remember, you can't absorb nutrients, food, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, whatever. You can't absorb them through a thick layer of mucus. Like magnesium and zinc don't move, kind of like viruses. Viruses don't move. But they can't, like, so if you have, let's say your intestines are here and this is the inside of your gut and you have like a zinc floating around, the zinc doesn't move to the mucus and then dig through to get into your bloodstream. It doesn't move. So it can't penetrate. So you would die of malnutrition is what I'm trying to say. If you had a really thick layer of mucus covering all of your intestines to protect you from the toxic bile, you would also die of malnutrition because you would not be getting any nutrition through that. It's like the people who say there's a layer of crap. You have 20 pounds of crap in your intestines, lining your intestines, and it's this thick, hard layer. No. To be blunt, that's a load of crap. Because if you had crap lining all of your intestines, you would die of malnutrition. And the way to show that this is true is right before they're going to give a colonoscopy, they just give people a laxative. One of the things, those of you who have had this laxative, yes, you may have a lot of diarrhea, but you're not crapping out 20 pounds of crusty bowel lining poop. You're not crapping out chunks of hardened poop. And then when they do the colonoscopy, they go up there and they see bright pink intestinal walls. This is another urban legend about health, is like the idea that you have 20 pounds of hardened feces lining all your intestines. It makes no sense. It's not true. Okay? So, but the mucus theory, yeah, like it would be short term, if anything. Let me go down and see if you said anything. So, well, that was a good question, Michael. I hope you got to see the answer. So, I think that was in. It says MX 125. I don't know if that means Mexico, but anyway, we're all done for the day. I went over as I usually do. I have a problem. I want to share this information so much that I go over. So, I'm going to go to the inner circle now. You all have a very happy New Year's. Stay safe. Be smart. Remember, alcohols are poisons. If you're out on the roads, seriously, those of you who haven't seen it, people are running red lights like crazy. Like the worst red light running I've ever seen, and it's only getting worse. So here's my tip for you on your daily driving practices. When your light turns green, don't jump out into the intersection. Look both ways before you cross the intersection if you're the first car in line, or you may become the next T-bone accident. So don't jump out into the intersection, and I would look both ways to make sure nobody's running the red lights, because the number of accidents, you guys have probably noticed, the car accidents are going through the roof and the roof. So just especially New Year's, or drunk, they'll do it even more. But in your normal driving, just watch out for people. People are going bonkers because everybody's getting more toxic, and the space weather is going on, and the stress of people. People are going bonkers. Watch out for them. Okay, so have a great weekend. I think we hit a record today with like 70 people on the live stream at once. So thank you all for coming, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.